All right, so let's do a quick little walkthrough about basic keyboard function. And like I was saying earlier, we had a request from a customer to do this, and so we want to share how this is done and some basic functions. We're not going to get into API conversations or anything, but we just powering on your keyboard, how to get to the web UI, adding cameras, controlling cameras, basic functionality, and getting started right away out of the box. This is how this should go. So let's cut over to my overhead, and I'm still here in the corner, but we want to just show you from startup how this is. Now, this is a BirdDog support keyboard. Okay, you can tell because it says BirdDog support on it, but it's one of the OGs, honestly, and so it's one of the originals. Now, on the top of the keyboard, there are multiple Ethernet ports, okay, or what look like RJ45 ports. Only one of these is for IP stuff. Okay, only one of them is for IP, and if you don't know, it's actually written on the back which is which. All right, so it'll be written above the actual port that you need to use. You're looking for the NDI IP port one, and we're going to plug that in. And there's a power button right here that you can use to manually turn off and on the actual keyboard itself, just in case you have any issues, you need to restart.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
So we're going to power it up, and this is a little LED screen. It's not malfunctioning, although it may look like it on the recording, but it's just perfectly fine. It says keyboard initializing. We need to wait for that to get done, fully booted up, and I'll explain kind of when I say home screen what I mean by that. But we need to wait until we kind of get to the home screen. And on the latest versions of the firmware, it's going to ask you to calibrate the joystick when you power off the unit. All right. So when you power off the unit, basically what happens is, well, the issue it corrects. Let's put it that way. We had an issue where the joystick was not sitting dead center all the time. And so if it's not sitting dead center all the time, then you have to recalibrate it to get it center. And we weren't asking for that. Okay, so on boot up, we weren't asking. So now that it actually, does boot up, it's, again, going to be kind of hard to see because of just the refresh rate here. But it does say uncalibrated, and then it says up. So what I do is I push the joystick all the way up, all right, and just hold it there. Now it says uncalibrated down. So I come all the way down and hold it there until it actually clears that. And sometimes I do it a couple of times, sometimes just once it does the trick. Uncalibrated left, okay. And then it should give me the uncalibrated right. Again, sometimes I have to do it more than once, and then uncalibrated right. And then it will say eventually calibrated. Okay, so I'm going to give it another chance here. Basically, what you're telling the keyboard is all the extremes that the joystick can go to. Okay, calibrated. There we go. So it registered that last one, and we're good to go. So that little calibrated word will go away here in a second. And we're ready to start navigating through our keyboard. Now, as you know, okay, or maybe you don't know, so here, maybe this is the first time you've heard this. Keyboard relies on MDNS to get the information off your network. The BirdDog devices are not constantly broadcasting their information to update everybody on the network. They do it initially, and then they don't do it all the time later. And so when you hit search on a keyboard, it's going to find anybody that's broadcasting at that moment, but it's not going to find everybody. And so having a DHCP network and an MDNS on your network is vital. Now, if you absolutely have to and you need to use static IP addressing for some reason, you need to have a discovery server acting as your MDNS to catalog the information on your network. Everybody needs to be pointed at discovery server. Remember my saying, it's not easier, it's harder to have a static network. And these are the things that it's harder to do. It's more customization. So if you absolutely can't have a DHCP and you have a static network, you have to run Discovery Server. It needs a Windows PC to do that. You need to point everybody, all your BirdDog devices at Discovery Server, including the keyboard. And then when you hit search, the search request will go to Discovery Server and say, give me everybody on the network, and it will get fed back, and then you'll be able to pick your cameras from the list, okay? But keyboard requires something on your network to be functioning as the MDNS, and if you're in static on an unmanaged switch and that's all you're doing, you don't have an MDNS, and keyboard's not going to work correctly for you. It might work initially when you power everything on, but it's not going to work long term. It's going to be incredibly frustrating. So, all right, shifting into how to get this thing started. So we've plugged it in. we want to verify that we have a DHCP address on the keyboard. And the way we do that is we click on Setup, and we put in our super secret password, which is all zeros. And it's going to take us to a menu that says Camera Settings, Keyboard Settings, and Exit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open Studio Monitor just for a second. Hopefully it doesn't kill my, hopefully it doesn't kill vMix. And I'm just going to zoom in just a bit so that you can maybe see this a wee bit better. Where is my P100? There you are. All right, so let's just zoom in a little bit better. Let's see if the refresh rate gets any better. It really doesn't. Okay, but anyways, you can see the screen at least in the flashes, and yeah, we'll just have to deal with that. So we're going to go to Keyboard Settings, and we do that by changing the LR direction knob and then clicking down on it. Okay, and now we get IP config as the first one, and the little arrow is this obviously the selection arrow. So click on IP config. The keyboard is in DHCP. And it's been given a 1 dot address, which is my network, okay? My network is 192.168.1. So if I see that address, 247, that's random enough. That's good. Did it pull the subnet information? It did. 22255 is what we are expecting in the NDI world, okay? You heard it here first. Don't get upset when my agents tell you, are you running a single 22255 subnet? WAC 24, okay? WAC 24, yes. You need to be running 255, 255, 2550. And then the default gateway also got pulled, 1.1 or it's 1.256, depending on how you have it configured. 1.1 is correct. So now I'm going to go exit, and I know that that's correct. Now I'm going to scroll. There are a couple of pages here, okay? So I'm going to scroll down to model info, and I'm going to click that LR direction knob. And on the latest firmware, it's going to tell you that IP address again, but then it's going to tell you your MAC address, which is pretty cool. And then it's going to tell you your firmware. Keep scrolling. It's going to tell you your firmware version. Okay, 1.13 NDI. This is NDI 5. And it's going to tell you, well, a couple other things, but 227 is what's here. Exit and exit. All right, so we exit all the way out. Now, there's a lot of exits. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what to do about that, but there's a lot of exiting menus. This is what I refer to as the home screen. When you're in operation of the joystick, this is the home screen where you see the camera that's called, you see the port number it's on, so 5961, the short name, which my cameras are all longer than the short name screen allows, and so it's, you know, BirdDog P400 Studio, yada yada yada, and it tells me the IP address of the camera that's called. So that's great. We want to now we want to search and find my BirdDog camera on the network. Now, before you do that, I want you to go to Studio Monitor on your computer, and I want you to make sure that you can see the camera on your computer in Studio Monitor and that you can control it. Okay? I want you to go to Studio Monitor on your computer that's on the network with your cameras and your joystick, and I want you to pull up the camera, and I want you to control the camera through Studio Monitor. That needs to be done next. And I can confirm I can do that with my cameras because I just set them up before the show. So do that next. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is actually call a camera, and we're going to set it up here on the joystick. Now, we need to know what the IP address is of the camera we want to call. And so the best way to do that is while you're in Studio Monitor, hit that little cogwheel in the bottom right-hand corner, and it will pull up the web UI for the camera. And in the web UI address, it tells me that the camera for the P100, which is the one we're watching here, is 1.15. So we're going to look for that one. I'm also going to open up Studio Monitor and pull the P4K. This is that camera that you're looking at directly. And that camera is 1.187. Okay, so those are the two that I want to use. I'm going to close Studio Monitor now because it's doing weird things to my ears. And all right, so I want to add those two cameras to my joystick, okay, to my controller. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, that's kind of fuzzy, isn't it? Sorry about that, folks. Let's see if we can get her to focus a little bit. It is a P100 first gen, so bear with me. So the first thing I want to do, I want to hit the search button, which is right here, okay? And it's out of focus again. Let's see if I can fix that while we do that. So we're going to hit the search button. And in the search selection protocol, it's going to say, do you want to do a Visca IP? Now, that's Sony Visca IP, okay? Do you want to do a Visca IP? Do you want to do an NDI search, NDI IP? Okay, so that's going to be the BirdDog NDI protocol. Or do you want to exit? There's one of those exit buttons there again. So let me zoom out here to see if we can get her to autofocus a little better. Do you want to exit? And so I want to search via NDI, which is the second selection there, which you can't really tell because, again, we're fuzzy for some reason. Let me dial this. Let me dial this in for you while we do this. So the second selection, and I'm going to touch the LR direction knob, and that's going to take me into the secondary menu here, which is going to say, okay, are you ready to begin searching? Now, you've already found your camera in Studio Monitor, right? And you were able to control the camera in Studio Monitor. And so now we need to, look at that, beauty. So we've already been able to find it in Studio Monitor, and now we can control it there so we know that it is on my network. So I'm going to click yes, okay, LR direction, yes. And we have found 9 cameras on the one network, which sounds about right. So the first one that we were looking for was 1.15. That's that P200, right? So I'm going to scroll with the UD direction knob. I'm going to scroll through the IP addresses, and I'm going to look for 1.15. Oh, look, 1.15. There she is. I'm going to click the LR direction knob, all right? And I'm going to assign it to camera 1. If I wanted to change that, you can dial that over to whatever number you want it to be. So if you want it to be camera 5 or camera 2 or whatever, scroll over with the UD direction knob, okay, up-down direction knob, and change the number accordingly. Okay, so I want this to be camera 1. And then I'm going to scroll down to exit and hit exit. Then I'm going to find my other camera, which was 187, which is here. And I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to change that to camera 2. And then I'm going to say exit. When you hit exit, it registers those cameras in those locations, all right? Now I'm going to hit exit from my search. Start search, no, and exit. And then I'm going to exit the select protocol menu as well. Okay. Now, calling cameras is one cam, and that's calling camera 1. And with any luck, we will be able to control this camera with the joystick. Aw, yeah. Check that out, kids. That is, now this camera is pointed directly down on the ceiling. So when I do this, it's going to spin. Okay, it's going to turn. Oh, and the speed is low. So when I do this, it's going to spin around. It's not actually going to go left, right? But it's also hanging from the ceiling on a precarious mount. And so I don't really want to move it around too much. But, you know, there we go. All right, so then the other thing was the P4K, right? So now 2 cam. I called that camera. And let's see if I can adjust this camera on live. Hello. So the joystick is controlling that camera, and that seems to work pretty well. Now, I'm going to line myself back up here. I should probably do this in vMix. So, all right, so line myself back up here in the shot. And so now I know, can I zoom with this guy? Or is this not, is this one, I wonder if my rocker is. My zoom speed is wrong. Anyways, okay, so I can zoom. Actually, I prefer to use the joystick anyways, to be honest with you. Because it's all here, right? It's a one-hand operation. Okay, we successfully added our cameras to our keyboard. Now, the LR direction is the speed of left-right, of the panning, okay? LR direction, this little LED screen that we get here, right here, see how I can like turn it way down? So then if I go left, it's a lot slower than if I were to crank her up and she flies around the room, okay? So, all right. We can manipulate the speed. We can move the cameras around. We can call them on the keyboard. That's basic function, all right? Now, I'm gonna show you some shortcuts that are also considered basic. The first thing we want to do is we want to get into the keyboard web UI and just verify a couple of things. So remember what we did? We said password. We go setup, password, keyboard settings, and then IP config. The web UI is 1.247, okay? So I'm going to put in 192.168.1.247 into my 247. I'm going to put that into my web browser. And I'm going to share this tab with you now. Okay, so here is the web browser for this device, and we have, let's log in here. And the thing I want to show you is over on that AV tab where we can change some of the API stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to get into this right now, the API stuff, but what I want you to know is this button right here, this function mode. I'm turning on the function mode on this keyboard, and I'll explain what that all is here in a second. Okay, so function, I want to go ahead and hit set. I want to go here and probably restart the device, but I won't do that. Let's see if that actually works for us. And then I'm going to go back to this screen. Now, I'm going to go down to exit, and I'm going to scroll down. Remember, this is under keyboard settings. Okay, this menu is keyboard settings. And what I want to do is I want to go to assign key F1. That is this button right here. Okay, F1. And I'm going to click that, and I want that to call camera 1. So that's what that is, cam 1. Now, you can have it call other things, okay? You can have it do a whole bunch of things. But I want it to call camera 1. So I'm going to go to exit. And then I want to change this to F2. And I want this to call camera 2. So I'm going to set this as camera 2, and I'm going to go exit. All right, now, instead of saying one cam and controlling, now I can just call the cameras by hitting F2 or hitting F1, okay? So I can control, this is that 100 that's on the ceiling, 2, now I can actually control the P4K, back to 1, now I'm controlling that P100 again. It's really fast, all right? That's the point, is it's supposed to be, you got, okay, if you have a big giant production, you're probably doing API commands and a whole bunch of other things. But if you're just doing like 3 cameras and a keyboard, this is super useful because we can say 1 through 3 are cameras 1 through 3. So you don't have to train anybody to do anything here. 1, 2, 3, cameras 1, 2, 3, right? So I want to get to camera 1, that's my overhead, or camera 2, I want to realign this one with the microphone. So we're gonna move it around. 1, 2, 3, super simple, super fast. All right, that's one of the easiest things to do here, is to set up those function buttons to call your immediate or your most used cameras. Okay, one other thing then that I'm going to show you that I hope that you will find a little bit helpful is first I'm going to fade over back to my main camera, and I want to throw up this little guy. And so let's jump over to my screen. And we're going to talk a little bit about one other feature that is an option here on your device. Now, remember, all the BirdDog devices the new ones should have your MAC address listed on the bottom of your keyboard. But yeah, that's not a thing on the originals. But you can find out your MAC address by going to Setup, put in your password. You go to keyboard settings and that IP config, and model info. Go to model info, and on there it will tell you what the MAC address is. Now, in good BirdDog fashion, remember the last 5 of that MAC address. So in my case, it's D0513. Okay, so now in Studio Monitor, we're going to open up. Let me do that real quick for you. Okay, so here is Studio Monitor. And I'm going to right-click, and this is odd, BirdDog D0513, keyboard router. Well, looky there. The keyboard is outputting the camera that, it's picking up my microphone, so let me turn that off. Silent. The keyboard is retransmitting the output that the keyboard is currently looking at. So I'm looking at camera 2 right now, right? So if I go to the home screen and I call camera 2, it shows it on that keyboard router. But if I call camera 1, it shows my overhead. And then I call camera 2, and it switches back to my main camera, or my camera 2 in this instance. This is such a genius move, BirdDog engineers, and shout out to Dan and his leadership and everything. You can call a show, basically, 3 cameras and a keyboard, and just use your keyboard output as your switcher if you want. So you can, because the keyboard is retransmitting the NDI, retransmitting is probably the wrong word, but that's the way you think about it. Now, what it's not doing is sending 140 megs to your keyboard in and out. It's not doing that. Okay, all it's doing is outputting the actual NDI feed from the camera to studio monitor in this instance. So it's 140 megs from camera to studio to my computer. But the keyboard is the one that's directing the traffic. So if I switch, watch now. Okay, so we're on camera 2. I'm going to press camera 1. Oh, I'm sorry. We're on camera 1. I'm going to press camera 2. It switches over. All right. I'm not doing that any other way. Now, you can get into the APIs. You can do a whole bunch of stuff with that. But you can call cameras, and it'll show you here. Now, so you might think, well, I wouldn't use that for my output of my stream, you know. But your camera operator could be watching that one, right? And so if you're talking to them, you're like, hey, I need a reposition on camera 2. You pull up camera 2, you reposition it real quick, and then it's like, okay, back to main camera. Like it's repositioned, ready to go. And then, hey, I need you to put that back the way you had it because now it doesn't look right. And so we put it back, reposition, okay, and back to main camera. And so like your operator can make small adjustments quickly without needing an additional monitor, without needing a whole, they can have just studio monitor on a PC or a crappy laptop or something. And when they say camera 1, boom, it changes for them. They make the adjustment back to their, you know, home road. It's such a great free update for your joystick, for your controller, for your keyboard, whatever you want to call it. It's such a great addition to the BirdDog product because it gives you the ability to quickly reference what it is that you're doing here and get back to the actual production. So it streamlines that a fair bit. Okay, well, I hope that it has been helpful how to jump in quick and do your keyboard business. I'm happy to take any questions. We're going to jump over to the chat here in a moment, back to the show, and do that. But feel free to reach out to us, of course, at help@birddog.tv if you have any additional questions about basic keyboard setup.